They returned Elyra Wren's mercy petitions at dusk, with the seals unbroken and the insults stamped across every page in red. Emotional nonsense. Not denied, not judged, not read. The stack landed on the black oak floor of Thornemere Petition Hall with a sound too small for the damage it did. 47 folded pleas slid against Elyra's boots, each tied in gray petition cord, each bearing the claw-marked seal of someone who had begged the Alpha King's Council for mercy and received silence dressed as procedure. The hall was full enough to make humiliation useful. Council witnesses stood beneath the iron wolf chandeliers. Pack stewards held tablets against their chests. Door guards watched from both ends of the long chamber, their faces trained into the blankness men wore when they wanted law to do cruelty for them. At the high petition desk, Council Scribe Vayla Rusk dipped her narrow stamp into red wax again, though there was nothing left to mark. Every petition she marked unread became easier to transfer into council custody. Rations, winter rights, debt protections, widow portions, the small legal scraps poor families still believed belonged to them. Vayla was a thin woman with silver-brown hair scraped tightly beneath a scribe's veil, pale fingers and eyes that could turn pity into a clerical error. Elyra Wren, Vayla said, by order of the revised petition policy, your submissions have been returned as repetitive emotional disturbance. Elyra stood with her hands at her sides. She did not kneel to gather the papers. Not yet. The returned petitions lay between her and the council, like small bodies no one wanted to name. They were mercy petitions, Elyra said. Vayla's mouth softened. That was how she sharpened herself. They were unsanctioned grief drafts. They had names. They had excessive feeling. A low murmur moved through the hall. Elyra heard the words hidden inside it before anyone spoke them aloud. Too much. Always pleading. Always women, widows, exiles, hungry boys, old debts, broken households. Always Elyra Wren making pain inconvenient. She looked past Vayla to the throne shadow at the end of the hall. Alpha King Caedric Thorne stood beneath the carved wolf arch, not seated, not softened by distance. He wore black court armor under a dark mantle fastened with silver claws. His hair was midnight dark, his face hard enough to make most people choose careful words, and his eyes held the cold amber of a wolf used to watching threats become obedient. He had not stamped the petitions himself. That was the mercy he would have counted. But his name sat at the bottom of the policy that allowed petitions to be dismissed without being opened. He had called it efficiency when the council brought it to him. A king liked clean doors. He had not asked who was left outside them. Elyra had read that signature until the ink blurred. Caedric's gaze moved from the scattered papers to her face. For a breath, something changed in him. Not regret. Not yet. Recognition, perhaps, of a woman standing too still for one called dramatic. Vayla saw him looking and struck before the silence could become dangerous. The Alpha King cannot be made to read every sob brought to his door, she said. Thornemere governs a kingdom, not a cradle. Robent, then? The hall exhaled, satisfied too early. They thought she was lowering herself to gather shame. Instead, she picked up the nearest petition and held it high enough for the red stamp to face the council. The wax mark covered the seal, not the words, because the words had never been allowed to breathe. This one was from Malin Voss, Elyra said, widow of the North Mill. Her husband died in the winter levy. Her protection ration was transferred to a man she had never met. Vayla's eyes cooled. Return petitions are not to be read aloud. Elyra broke the gray cord with her thumb. A sound cracked through the hall. Not loud. Final. The door guards shifted. Caedric lifted his head. Elyra unfolded the petition. The page inside was blank. The hall went still. Vayla smiled. There, she said softly. Proof of emotional manufacture. She submits empty pages and calls them suffering. Elyra stared at the parchment. Malin's words had been there. Elyra knew because she had copied them by candlelight when the widow's hands shook too badly to hold the quill. She had written every line exactly as Malin spoke it. No ornament, no tears added. No plea shaped prettier than grief had made it. My protection was taken while my husband's body was still warm. That had been the first line. Now the page held nothing. Alira's fingers tightened. Vayla stepped from behind the desk. Do you understand now, Majesty? This is why the policy was necessary. Emotional petitioners flood the hall with blank grief, then accuse the council of silence. Caedric's gaze remained on the parchment. Was it blank when submitted? He asked. Vayla did not hesitate. Many are. Not yes, not no. Elyra heard the shape of it. So did Caedric. His eyes cut briefly to the scribe. Vayla bowed her head just enough to survive the moment. The stamp protects the throne from manipulation. Elyra lowered the blank page. No, she said. It protects whoever stole the words. The temperature in the hall changed. Wolves reacted before people did. Every shadow cast by the chandelier seemed to lean toward the petitions scattered on the floor. Vayla's voice hardened. Careful, Elyra. Elyra looked at the unopened stack. 46 petitions remained sealed. Women, widows, exiles. A boy whose mother had been sold beyond Pack Road under debt law. 3 sisters who had signed away their winter rights to keep their grandmother from being cast outside the southern gate. And the protection rights Elyra had spent in secret, one by one to cover them when no council door opened. Her own rights, her own standing, her own future before Pack law. All returned to her as nonsense. She picked up a second petition. Vayla snapped. Guards. The 2 nearest guards moved. Caedric's voice stopped them. Wait, that single word was not rescue. Elyra did not mistake it for rescue. It only meant he had finally become curious about the injury his policy had made legal. She broke the second cord. The page inside was blank too. Then the third. Blanc. The fourth. Blank. A line of red stamps watched her from the floor like open wounds. Vayla turned to Caedric. Majesty, she is staging public distress. Elyra laughed once. It sounded nothing like humor. You returned 47 voices and call one woman loud. No one answered. Outside the hall, the first pack door slammed. Every head turned. Then another door. Then another. Petition law had always used doors as symbol. A closed door meant a plea was finished. An open door meant the pack still owed answer. Across the inner keep, black wood struck stone in a rolling sequence, chamber by chamber, corridor by corridor, as if an unseen hand had gone through Thornemere and forced every closed door to confess it existed. A guard ran to the side entrance and pulled it open. Cold night air rushed into the petition hall. Beyond the threshold, across the nearest black wooden door, a parchment hung nailed open by its own broken seal. The page was no longer blank. Words glowed across it in pale mercy silver. Mylin Vos, widow of the North Mill, protection stolen before burial fire. Caedric went still. Elyra did not move. The petitions at her feet began to unfold by themselves. Olne be olne, cords snapping, wax seals breaking, blank pages filling with names. Then, from somewhere deep inside Thornemere, every pack door began to open. No one in Petition Hall touched the glowing page, because mercy had become evidence. Not rumor, not feeling, evidence. The parchment nailed across the nearest black door shone in pale mercy silver, each word bright enough to make the guards lower their eyes. Mylin Vos, widow of the North Mill. Protection stolen before burial fire. Elyra Wren stood among the unfolded petitions scattered at her feet, her fingers still curled around one blank page that was no longer blank enough to save anyone. Beyond the open side entrance, more doors slammed through Thornemere, some near, some far. The sound moved through the keep like a judgment walking room by room. Council Scribe Vayla Rusk was the first to recover. Of course she was. A procedural disturbance, she said sharply. Nothing more. The phrase landed in the hall with the clean dullness of a stamp. Caedric Thorne turned his head toward her. Vayla bowed slightly, but did not retreat. Petition law is symbolic, Majesty. Doors, seals, cords, witness thresholds. When a petitioner tampers with returned documents, symbolic response is possible. It does not constitute proof. Elyra looked at the glowing petition on the door. A widow's stolen ration is not symbolic. Vayla's eyes slid to her. Nor is public hysteria. The old humiliation should have burned. Weak, dramatic, too much. Instead, Elyra felt something colder and steadier forming beneath her ribs. The petitions had not opened to comfort her. They had opened because every closed door in Thornemere had been taught to lie, and lies had weight when enough desperate hands pressed against them. Caedric stepped past the throne shadow. The hall shifted around him, not from affection, from instinct. He was still the Alpha King, and even the men who had smiled at Elyra's returned petitions moved aside before his silence. He stopped before the door and read the words once. Then again, his expression did not crack. That made it worse. A king's shame wore armor, too. Who stole Malin's protection? He asked. No apology, no softness. Only the first correct question he had asked all evening. Vayla answered without pause. No one stole it. The North Mill widow's protection was transferred for administrative guardianship. Elyra laughed once. The sound turned several faces toward her. Say it plain. Vayla's jaw tightened. Council custody preserves vulnerable portions from misuse. Malin was given 2 winter rations and burial protection after her husband died in the levy. 3 days later, her name was removed, and the portion was placed under Halvin Rusk. A murmur moved through the hall. Caedric's eyes cut to Vayla. Rusk, he said. My cousin's household oversaw distribution in that district, Vayla replied. Temporarily, Malin never received it, Elyra said. Vayla's voice sharpened. Because you interfered. You submitted emotional petitions instead of using a pointed grievance sequence. There was no sequence for a widow already erased. Beyond the door, another parchment flared. Farther down the corridor, a second black door opened with a heavy crack of hinges. The petition at Elyra's feet stirred. Only one. That mattered. The whole stack did not rise at once. The petitions were not spilling all truth like a storm trying to win an argument. One page answered one door. One plea demanded one threshold. Petition law had not become chaos. It had become specific. Elyra bent and picked up the glowing sheet. Vayla took one step forward. Returned petitions remain council property. Elyra looked at the unbroken seal hanging from the page like torn skin. You returned them. Caedric's gaze moved to her. She did not let it warm her. That single weight in his voice downstairs had not saved Malin. His policy had helped bury her. Curiosity did not cleanse a signature. Elyra walked to the second open door. No one stopped her this time. Inside was a narrow records chamber lined with small iron boxes. Each box bore a household name. The glowing petition flew from Elyra's hand and nailed itself to the doorframe. Words appeared slowly, as if dragged from a throat that had been forced silent too long. Sera Vale, exile widow. Winter portion transferred to council-controlled name. Protection sponsor Elyra Wren. The last line struck the hall harder than the first. Caedric looked at Elyra. Vayla turned too quickly. That line is irrelevant. Elyra's fingers tightened. No, that line is why you made the page blank. Protection sponsors are private attachments. Protection sponsors are legal shields, Elyra said. I used mine because they had none left. A steward whispered. She spent her own standing? Vayla snapped. Do not repeat what has not been verified. But the iron box beneath Saravel's name opened by itself. Inside lay a narrow ledger strip folded into council blue. It slid out and dropped onto the floor. Caedric picked it up before Vayla could move. Elyra watched his face as he read. Not because she wanted his pity, because she wanted him to see the shape of what his clean policy had made easy. Widow portion reassigned, he said slowly. Recipient name held in council custody. Vayla's voice was calm again. Transferred for administrative guardianship. Caedric looked up. To whom? Vayla hesitated. Only a breath. Enough. The petition on the doorframe burned brighter. The answer wrote itself beneath Sarah's name. Custodial holder. Vayla Rusk, Council Scribe. The hall went silent. Vayla did not confess. She did not flinch in any useful way. Instead, she turned toward the watching stewards and lifted her chin. A scribe may hold temporary custody when petitioners are unstable, exiled, widowed, indebted, or subject to manipulation by unauthorized sponsors. Elyra looked at her. Unauthorized. Her voice was quiet, dangerously quiet. I was authorized when I spent my protection rights. Not after your petitions became repetitive, not after you made them blank. The third door opened before Vayla could answer. This one did not open into a household chamber. It opened at the far end of Petition Hall, behind the high desk where only council scribes were permitted to pass. The black wood cracked inward, and cold air rolled out carrying the smell of dust, wax, and old paper that had never seen a hand it could trust. Every unfolded petition at Elyra's feet turned toward that door. Not all opening, all recognizing. Vayla's face changed. Caedric saw it. So did Elyra. The Alpha King walked toward the door, but Elyra moved first. He stopped beside her, not ahead of her. That was not redemption, but it was learning fast enough to avoid making a new wound in front of the old one. Beyond the doorway lay a hidden records room, filled from floor to ceiling with stacked gray bundles, each tied in petition cord, each seal unbroken, each stamped in red. Emotional nonsense. At the center of the room stood a black ledger on an iron stand. Its cover bore Caedric Thorne's policy seal. Across the front, in pale mercy silver, the title appeared, Unread Mercy Ledger. The unread mercy ledger did not open when the Alpha King touched it. That was the first insult Thornemere offered him in return. Caedric Thorne stood before the iron stand with one hand on the black cover, his court armor catching the pale glow of the petitions behind him. The policy seal stamped into the ledger's face bore his own name, his own claw mark, his own authority pressed into wax and law. Still, the ledger remained shut. A sound moved through the hidden room. Not a laugh. No one was foolish enough for that. But Elyra heard the shape of satisfaction in the silence. For years, closed doors had obeyed kings more faithfully than people did. Now one sat beneath Caedric's hand and refused him. Vayla Rusk recovered with a breath. Expected, she said. Administrative ledgers are not opened by force of curiosity. The policy seal confirms jurisdiction, not personal access. Caedric's hand remained on the cover. Who has access? The council scribe assigned to mercy classification. Elyra looked at her. You. Vayla inclined her head. Under procedure. The word was almost beautiful in her mouth. Procedure. a clean sleeve hiding a dirty hand. Around them, the hidden records room breathed dust and old wax. Gray petition bundles filled the shelves from floor to ceiling, each one tied in cord, each one stamped emotional nonsense in red. 47 had been returned to Elyra tonight. Hundreds more had not even been returned. They had been stacked in darkness, where no petitioner could see how mercy was turned into inventory. Caedric looked at the shelves. His face stayed hard. But Elyra saw his wolf shadow shift behind him, restless against the stone floor. The beast did not understand paper, but it understood buried things. "Open it," he said. Vayla did not move. "Majesty, the ledger contains private vulnerability classifications. Widows, exiles, debt households, disputed protections. To open it in front of a petitioner would violate the dignity of those named." Elyra stepped past Caedric before he could answer. "Dignity?" she said. Her voice did not rise. That made the word worse. "You stamped their pleas as nonsense, erased their sentences, transferred their rations, and stacked their sealed names in a room behind your desk." Vayla's eyes cooled. "And you collected grief until it began serving your own importance." There it was, the hook she always used when law could not hold. Make mercy look like vanity. Make witness look like hunger for attention. Elyra turned to the shelves. Malin Voss. The room changed. Not loudly. No storm, no grand wolf howl. One gray bundle shivered on the left wall. A single cord snapped. The petition flew from its shelf and struck the ledger cover flat, seal down, as if a hand had placed it there for judgment. Vayla went still. Caedric looked at Elyra. "What did you do?" "I named the first door." "The first door?" "Every petition opens only the door that refused it. This room opened because every petition here was refused by the same law." She pointed to the ledger. "But the ledger will not answer a king who signed without reading. It answers the person whose plea was made unread." Vayla moved then, too fast for dignity. She reached for the petition on the cover. Caedric caught her wrist before her fingers touched the seal. The room fell silent. His grip was not cruel, not yet, but it was absolute. "No one corrects a page before it opens," he said. Elyra did not thank him. He had stopped a hand tonight. He had not stopped the policy when it mattered. Vayla's eyes flashed. "Majesty, if this petitioner performs unsanctioned reading, every rejected household in Thornemere may claim retroactive injury." "Good," Elyra said. Caedric's gaze cut to hair. She met it. Let him hear how little she feared the size of the wound. The petition seal broke by itself. The ledger opened. Its first page was blank. Then Malin's glowing petition words bled downward into the ledger lines, filling them one by one. Petitioner, Malin Voss. Status, widow of North Mill Levy. Request, burial protection, winter ration, continued house door recognition. Petition classification, emotional nonsense. Rights disposition, abandoned by silence. Elyra's hands closed into fists. Abandoned. That was how they did it. A plea returned unread became silence. Silence became abandonment. Abandonment became transferable property. Caedric read the line twice. His voice came lower when he spoke. "Who wrote 'abandoned by silence'?" Vayla's chin lifted. "The phrase was approved under the efficiency policy. You wrote it. I implemented the language your council ratified." "Who received her rights?" Vayla looked at the ledger as if it had inconvenienced her, not exposed her. The next lines formed. Winter ration. Transferred to council custody. Burial protection. Transferred to council custody. House door recognition. Suspended. Petition sponsor, Elyra Wren. Sponsor right used. 1 personal protection credit. Caedric turned toward Elyra. The question in his face came too late. She answered anyway. I spent mine because she had none. Vayla spoke quickly. Personal protection credits cannot override abandoned status. They were not abandoned, Elyra said. They were unread. The ledger page brightened. A new line appeared beneath her words. Unread is not abandoned. The hidden room exhaled. Every petition bundle on the shelves stirred. Caedric's hand tightened around Vayla's wrist before he released her. Read the next line. Vayla's composure cracked only at the edge. Majesty, read it. She looked at the ledger. For the first time that night, she did not sound like law. She sounded like a woman counting exits. Custodial holder, she said. Vayla Rusk. The page turned by itself. Another petition struck the cover. Then another. Then another. Each one opened one line, not the whole truth. A widow portion. A debt shield. A winter ration. A house door recognition. All transferred through the same phrase. Abandoned by silence. Elyra stepped closer to the ledger, her throat tight with fury she would not spend as tears. This was never about emotional disturbance, she said. You made unread mercy into property. Vayla's eyes found Caedric's. Administrative guardianship prevents chaos. Without centralized custody, weak households sell themselves to rival packs. Widows are manipulated. Exiles vanish into illegal bonds. The council preserved what the petitioners were too unstable to hold. Preserved it where? Elyra asked. Vayla did not answer. The farthest wall of the hidden room answered for her. A door appeared where there had been only stone. Black wood. Iron hinges. No handle. Across it, a petition nailed itself open. The letters formed slowly, pale, mercy silver, cutting through dust. Exile Sale Review. Access granted by Alpha King Policy Seal. Caedric went very still. Elyra looked from the glowing words to the claw-marked signature on the ledger cover. Then the door opened inward. Inside waited another room, and every bundle in it bore the name of a living exile marked already sold. The smell reached Elyra before the room did. Cold ink. Old wool. Fear pressed so long into paper it had become part of the grain. Beyond the black door, shelves curved into darkness beneath a ceiling too low for comfort. Gray bundles filled every wall from floor to stone arch, each tied in petition cord, each marked with a narrow black strip instead of red wax. The red stamp had called mercy nonsense. The black strip did something quieter. It priced what silence made available. Elyra stepped across the threshold before Caedric could. Vayla's voice snapped behind her. No petitioner is authorized to enter an exile review room. Elyra did not turn. Then it should not have opened to a petition. The nearest bundle shook. Only one. That was still the law. 1 page, 1 door, 1 plea, 1 answer. The mercy petitions were not tearing Thornemere apart in chaos. They were walking the kingdom through the exact rooms where refusal had been made profitable. Caedric entered after her, slower this time, as if the air itself had become accusation. His wolf shadow stretched behind him along the floor, huge and dark, ears flattened toward the shelves. Name the room, he said. Vayla stood outside the threshold, careful not to step fully in. Exile Sale Review is an old classification term. It does not indicate completed sale. It indicates possible external placement for persons without stable pack attachment. Elyra looked back at her. People. Vayla's eyes cooled. Legal persons require recognized doors. The words struck harder than a slap. Elyra turned to the first trembling bundle. The black strip across it bore a name in thin silver ink. Mira Holland. Exile widow. No house door recognized. No blood sponsor. No winter portion. Elyra knew that name. Mira had come to the petition steps at dawn 3 months ago with torn sleeves and a wolf bite healed wrong across one shoulder. Her mate had died under a border levy. His brothers had claimed the house. The council had marked her unsettled because grief made her scent unstable. Elyra had used one of her own protection rights to keep the southern gate from closing against her. She was covered, Elyra said. Caedric looked at her. By you. By law. Vayla's mouth tightened. Temporary personal shelter is not permanent recognition. It was enough to stop sale. For 30 days. Elyra went still. Caedric turned toward Vayla. Sale to whom? Vayla's chin lifted. External custody houses. Work alliances. Debt receivers. The language sounds cruel only when removed from administrative necessity. Elyra broke the black strip. A sound passed through the shelves, low and shivering, like many sealed mouths trying not to cry out. The bundle opened. Inside was not a petition. It was a sale sheet. Mira Holland. Status. Living exile. Sponsor claim. Elyra Wren. Sponsor claim rejected as emotional interference. Destination. East Finn Holding House. Price received. 3 winter rations, 1 silver debt mark. Elyra's breath stopped. Price received. Not proposed. Not reviewed. Received. Caedric took the sheet from her hand. His face did not break, but something behind it darkened until the room seemed to lean away from him. When? He asked. Vayla answered too quickly. If payment was entered, it would have been held pending transfer finalization. When? The single word came lower. A steward behind them whispered, 3 weeks past. Elyra looked at the steward. He went pale. Vayla turned on him. You will not speak from partial indexing. Caedric did not look away from the sale sheet. Where is Mira Holland? Vayla's voice became careful. External custody records are not kept in Petition Hall. Where? East Finn, if transfer completed. Elyra reached for the next bundle. Vayla moved at last, stepping inside the room. Stop. Every petition cord on the shelves tightened. Not opening. Waiting. Elyra looked at her. Afraid one door will become a road? I am afraid of a petitioner confusing pity with governance. No, Elyra said. You are afraid governance has receipts. The bundle in her hand snapped open. A second sale sheet unfolded. Then a third bundle trembled but did not open. The law held. 1 door, 1 page, 1 name. Elyra read the second sheet herself because the room needed to hear a human voice before Vayla turned it into ink again. Ansel Reed. Living exile. Sponsor claim Elyra Wren. Sponsor claim rejected as repetitive emotional disturbance. Destination, Red Orchard Labor House. Price received, 2 wolf, silver hooks, and 1 stored grain bond. Caedric's hand closed around the first sheet until the paper creased. You used her sponsor rights as flags, he said. Vayla did not answer. Elyra did. She used them to find who had someone left to protect them. The words tasted like ash. That was the secret wound opening under the old one. Elyra had thought she was shielding the voiceless with the little standing she had. Instead, Vayla had used her mercy petitions as a map. Every person Elyra named became easier to locate, classify, and sell before the plea could reach a door that owed answer. Caedric looked at her then, not with pity, with horror sharpened by responsibility. She did not let him have comfort from being horrified. I brought them to your hall, she said. Your policy taught her how to bury them. His eyes lowered to the sale sheet. No apology came. Good. An apology would have been too small and too eager to close the wound. Vayla stepped toward the central shelf. Majesty, I strongly advise sealing this room until tribunal. These documents involve unstable persons, disputed statuses, and sensitive pact security. If read publicly, rival houses could claim Thornemere mishandled exile inventory. Inventory, Elyra repeated. Vayla's face stilled. Caedric heard it too. His wolf shadow rose along the wall. The nearest shelf cracked. A hidden strip of black wax slid from behind the wood and dropped to the floor at Elyra's feet. The mercy petition in her hand turned toward it. Pale silver letters burned across the air. Sponsor rights reassigned upon petitioner disqualification. Elyra went cold. Caedric looked at her. What does that mean? Vayla said. Nothing actionable. Elyra bent and picked up the black wax strip. Her own name surfaced beneath the heat of her fingers. Elyra Wren. Status review. Pending disqualification. Protection rights held for council transfer. For the first time that night, Caedric looked away from the documents and directly at Vayla. But the room answered before he could speak. At the far end of the exile shelves, a final door opened by itself. Behind it stood a narrow chamber lined with empty hooks. On each hook hung a petition cord, and at the center, already prepared beneath Caedric's policy seal, waited a transfer tag bearing Elyra's name. The empty hooks did not move when Elyra entered. That was what made them cruel. They waited in perfect order along the narrow chamber wall, each iron curve polished by hands that had used law often enough to leave no fingerprints. Petition cords hung from them like sleeping nooses, gray and thin, each one tied for a person who had not yet been told they were already being measured for removal. At the center of the chamber, beneath Alpha King Caedric Thorne's policy seal, the transfer tag bearing Elyra's name rested on a black slate stand. Elyra Wren. Status review. Pending disqualification. Protection rights held for council transfer. No one spoke at first. Even Vayla Rusk understood the value of letting horror look complicated before someone named it simple. Elyra stepped closer. Caedric moved behind her. Not beside, not ahead. He had learned that much inside the last 3 rooms. The tag was smaller than the sale sheets, more elegant, written in council silver instead of black wax. Not exile inventory, not widow custody, not ration reassignment. This was a higher document, meant for a person whose legal standing had to be dismantled carefully before anything could be taken. Vayla's voice came from the doorway, composed again. Pending review is not punishment. Elyra looked at the empty hooks. Then why are their cords ready? Because procedure anticipates outcomes. Whose outcome? Vayla's expression cooled. Yours, if you continue to weaponize unstable petitioners against the hall. Caedric's wolf shadow stretched across the floor between them, dark and rigid. Define disqualification. Vayla answered him, not Elyra. A petitioner may be disqualified when repeated unsanctioned filings create public disorder, when personal rights are used to interfere with council allocations, or when the petitioner's conduct threatens confidence in lawful distribution. Elyra laughed once. It sounded tired enough to hurt. You made mercy look like disorder so you could call stealing distribution. Vayla did not blink. You spent protection rights you did not have the rank to spend responsibly. They were mine. Personal rights exist within pact structure. They are not sentimental coin for every widow who cries at your sleeve. Caedric's head turned slightly. The chamber seemed to wait with him. Elyra did not. She reached for the transfer tag. Vayla moved forward. Do not touch that. Caedric's voice stopped her. Stand where you are. The command landed hard enough that the doorframe creaked. Vayla obeyed, but her eyes sharpened with calculation. Elyra picked up the tag. The moment her fingers touched the silver lettering, the petition cords along the hooks tightened. One by one, names rose along them in pale mercy silver. Not opening fully, only answering the hand whose rights had been marked for seizure. Maelin vos, Sera vale, Mira Holland, Ansel Riet. More names followed. Too many. Each cord held someone Elyra had petitioned for. Each person had been tied not only to their own plea, but to her protection standing. Her stomach turned cold. They were not only taking from them, she said. The tag warmed in her palm. They were taking through me. Caedric's expression darkened. Explain. Elyra looked at him then, not gently. You signed a policy that let the council call a petition unread. Unread became silence. Silence became abandonment. But if I had used protection rights on the petitioner, abandonment was harder to claim. She lifted the tag. So they prepared to disqualify me. Once I became unstable, unauthorized, repetitive, emotional, every right I spent could be treated as invalid. The cord shivered. The tag wrote a new line across itself. Sponsor disqualification enables retroactive rights reassignment. Caedric read it. His face did not break, but his wolf shadow struck the far wall hard enough to crack stone. Vayla's voice sharpened. That is a lawful safeguard. Otherwise, one reckless woman could attach her name to every vulnerable household in Thornemere and prevent council intervention. Intervention, Elyra said. Is that what you called the sale room? Vayla's mouth tightened. Not confession. A wound in control. Caedric stepped toward the black slate stand. Who requested the disqualification review? Vayla folded her hands before her. The council may initiate review when petition volume becomes excessive. Who? The classification office. Who? Silence pressed against the hooks. A petition cord snapped from the wall. It flew across the chamber and wrapped around the transfer tag in Elyra's hand. The tag split open like a folded petition, revealing a hidden inner slip, requesting authority. Council Scribe Vayla Rusk. Supporting claim. Petitioner displays excessive emotional identification with widows, exiles, deaded women, and unhoused minors. Recommended action. Rights hold. Door recognition suspension. Temporary transfer to council custody. Caedric's eyes lifted to Vayla. This time, she did not speak quickly. Elyra did. Temporary, she said. Like Malin's ration. Like Mira's transfer. Like every mercy you buried until no one could find the body of the word. Vayla looked at her with cold dislike. You think feeling makes you clean. It does not. You attached yourself to desperate people until they believed your name could save them. You made yourself necessary. No, Elyra said. You made doors impossible. The tag burned brighter. A line appeared beneath the recommended action. Final transfer location. Council Mercy Vault. Caedric turned toward the hall behind them. There is a Mercy Vault? Vayla's face went still. Elyra felt the answer before it came. The chamber did not open all its doors. Only one. At the end of the hook room, a narrow black panel slid inward without a sound. Beyond it was darkness. And from the darkness came a low rustle of paper stacked too tightly to breathe. Every petition cord in the chamber pointed toward it. Caedric stepped forward. Elyra caught his sleeve before he crossed the threshold. He stopped at once. She released him as soon as he did. This door opened to my name, she said. Not yours. His jaw tightened around the truth. Then he stepped aside. Elyra entered first. The Mercy Vault was smaller than the sale room, but worse. Shelves lined the walls from floor to ceiling. On them sat dozens of sealed wooden boxes, each labeled with a petitioner's name. Inside the nearest open box lay ration tokens, debt shields, widow portions, house door keys, and folded slips of personal protection credit. Not copies, the actual rights. Vayla had not merely hidden petitions. She had harvested what mercy was meant to protect. At the center of the vault stood one empty box, newly carved, waiting beneath a white cloth. Elyra lifted the cloth. Her own name was burned into the lid. Elyra Wren, contents expected after disqualification. Behind her, Caedric inhaled once, very quietly. Then the box opened by itself. Inside lay the first protection credit Elyra had ever spent. Still warm, still marked with Malin Voss's name. And beneath it, in Caedric's own policy script, one line glowed. Sponsor credit recovered from failed mercy claim. The recovered credit was warm because it had only just been taken. Elyra knew that before anyone explained it. Protection credits cooled when spent cleanly. Once given to a widow, exile, orphan, or debt-bound household, they belonged to the person shielded by them. They no longer answered the sponsor's blood, rank, or regret. This one still held the heat of removal. Malin Voss's name glowed faintly across the small, bone-white token in Elyra's palm, but beneath it, Caedric Thorne's policy script had burned a second line like a wound trying to call itself lawful. Sponsor credit recovered from failed mercy claim. Elyra closed her fingers around the token. It pulsed once, not with power, with protest. Vayla Rusk stood in the doorway of the mercy vault, her face pale in the silver light of stolen rights. Behind her, the hidden rooms of Thornemere waited in a line of open doors. The unread mercy ledger, the exile sale shelves, the hook chamber, and now this small vault where mercy had been stripped down to tokens, keys, ration marks, and ownership of survival. Recovery is standard, Vayla said. Of course, that was the first word she reached for. Standard. As if cruelty became cleaner when repeated often enough. Caedric looked at the open box bearing Elyra's name. A sponsor credit cannot be recovered from a living claim without judgment. Vayla answered carefully. The judgment was the claim's failure. Elyra turned to her. Malin's claim did not fail. It was returned. It was unread. It was classified as nonsense, Elyra said. By you. Vayla's eyes sharpened. By policy. The word moved through the vault and found Caedric. He did not flinch. That almost angered Elyra more than if he had. A flinch would have been human. His stillness was royal, trained, armored, but she saw his wolf shadow along the wall, restless and low, as if the beast behind the king understood what the man had not wanted to know. Caedric's voice came quiet. Who authorized recovery from a living sponsor? Vayla folded her hands. Your Majesty. The revised policy allows the Council to recover sponsor protections when a petition is dismissed for emotional redundancy, procedural excess, or destabilizing personal attachment. Elyra laughed once. The sound broke wrong in the small room. Destabilizing personal attachment, she said. You mean I knew their names? You confused personal feeling with lawful capacity. No, Elyra lifted Malin's token. I confused mercy with mercy. The token brightened. One shelf in the vault trembled. Only one. The law held. One name, one right, one stolen answer. A narrow wooden box slid forward from the second shelf and opened by itself. Inside lay 3 winter ration chips, 2 burial fire pins, and a small black iron house key marked with the north mill door. Each item bore Malin Voss's name beneath a layer of council wax. Caedric stepped toward it. Elyra's voice stopped him. Do not touch them first. He stopped. A small thing. A necessary thing. Vayla saw it and hated it. "These objects are under council custody," she said. "A petitioner cannot simply reclaim distributed resources because her feelings have become dramatic enough to stir old door symbols." Elyra looked at the box. Malin's husband burned in a levee furnace because Thornemere needed iron before winter. The law owed her burial fire, winter ration, and house door recognition. I gave one personal protection credit to hold those rights in her name until the council read her petition. You had no authority to hold a levee widow open indefinitely. I had 30 days. 30 days expired. Because you returned the petition unread on the 31st. Vayla said nothing. Caedric's head turned slowly toward her. The vault seemed to narrow. Vayla recovered. "The timing may be unfortunate but not unlawful," the box answered. The burial fire pins rose from their slot and turned black at the edges. Pale mercy silver burned across the inside of the lid. Petition received, day 12. Petition held unopened, 19 days. Returned after sponsor window closed. Claim marked failed. Sponsor credit recovered. Elyra felt something inside her go very still. She had believed the council delayed because they were careless. They had waited for the window to close. Caedric read the lines once. Then again, his voice changed when he spoke. Not softer, more dangerous. "You waited." Vayla lifted her chin. The petition queue was extensive. "You waited until her protection expired. The system processed in order." Elyra looked around the vault. "Then open the queue." Vayla's face tightened. There. The fear lived there. Not in Malin's token alone. Not in the sale sheets. In the order. If the queue opened, timing would become pattern. Pattern would become intent. Intent would become theft. Caedric heard it in her silence. "Open the queue," he said. Vayla's voice lowered. "Majesty." Queue records include private household distress. Elyra stepped toward the shelf. "You sold their distress. Do not dress it now." The mercy petition outside the first door gave one silver pulse. Malin's box slid fully into Elyra's hands. This time, Vayla moved. She raised her scribe ring and pressed its red stone against the vault wall. Emergency seal. The walls answered at once. Black shutters dropped over the shelves. Iron teeth slid from the floor. Every wooden box in the mercy vault began to close. Caedric moved, but the vault did not answer a king's anger. It answered the policy seal he had signed, and the seal had been written to obey the council in rooms like this. Vayla looked at him with a thin, almost sorrowful expression. "For the protection of vulnerable records, Majesty." Elyra held Malin's box against her chest. The iron teeth rose around her boots. Caedric's wolf shadow struck the wall, but the shutters only darkened. "Elyra," he said. She did not look at him. If she looked, she might see guilt, and guilt would not open anything. She placed Malin's recovered sponsor credit back into the widow's box. Not into her own hand. Not into the empty box bearing her name. Into Malin's. "I return the right to the name it was meant to hold," Elyra said. The vault stopped closing. Vayla's eyes widened. Caedric went still. The house key in Malin's box turned silver. Somewhere beyond the petition hall, a distant door opened with a sound like old grief finding air. The vault wall behind the shelf split down the center. Not all the way. Only enough to reveal a narrow passage lined with hanging queue strips, each marked with a date of arrival, a date of return, and a sponsor window. The first strip tore free and floated into the light. Malin vos. Received day 12. Held until day 31. Sponsor credit recovered. Beneath it, dozens more strips stirred. Everyone bore the same pattern. Then the deepest shutter opened by itself. revealing a locked black cabinet stamped with Caedric's policy seal and Vayla's scribe ring mark. Across its door, pale Mercy silver wrote the title of the record inside. Delay Order Ledger. The Delay Order Ledger did not look like theft. That was its cruelty. It sat inside the black cabinet behind Caedric Thorne's policy seal and Vayla Rusk's scribe ring mark, bound in dark leather, clean-edged, narrow, almost modest. No blood on the cover. No chains. No crying widow pressed between its pages. Only a title written in pale Mercy silver across the cabinet door, bright enough to make every stolen right in the vault seem to hold its breath. Delay Order Ledger. Elyra stood with Malin Voss's box against her chest, feeling the small house key inside it pulse like a frightened heart. Behind her, the Mercy Vault had gone still after nearly sealing itself shut. The black shutters remained half-lowered over the shelves. Iron teeth waited around the floor, not attacking, not retreating. Vayla's emergency seal had failed, not because Caedric had commanded it, because Elyra had returned one protection right to the name it was meant to hold. That frightened Vayla more than anger would have. Delay records are administrative sequence documents, Vayla said, her voice carefully even. They do not determine legal outcome. They merely manage urgency. Elyra looked at the cue strips hanging inside the narrow passage beyond the cracked wall. Each one bore 3 dates: received, held, returned. Each one weighted like a throat that had swallowed the same answer too many times. Manage urgency, she repeated. Vayla lifted her chin. A kingdom does not collapse because every plea is cruel. It collapses because every plea is treated as immediate. Caedric stood near the cabinet, his shadow filling the narrow space beside Elyra without touching her. His wolf shadow pressed low along the floor, tense and silent. "Open it," he said. Vayla's gaze flicked to the cabinet. "I cannot recommend that, Majesty. I did not ask for recommendation. The ledger is protected under your policy seal." His face hardened. "Then it should answer me." Elyra heard the wound beneath the anger. Stilled pride. Still not enough. She stepped forward before he could place his hand on the seal. "The ledger will not answer the man whose name made delay lawful," she said. Caedric stopped. The word struck him in front of Vayla, in front of the half-open shelves, in front of every box that held proof of how cleanly a signature could become a knife. He did not defend himself. Good. Defense would have wasted air. Elyra set Malin's box on the cabinet ledge. The house key inside slid forward by itself and struck the lock with a soft silver note. The cabinet opened. The delay order ledger remained closed. Vayla exhaled once, almost silently. Elyra heard relief in it and understood. The box could open the cabinet, not the book. The mercy petition still required the right wound at the right door. Elyra looked down at Malin's recovered credit, then at the cue strips. "Malin Voss," she said. One strip tore free from the passage wall and drifted to the ledger cover. The book opened to its first page. Not all pages. One. The law held. One name, one door, one answer. Pale Mercy Silver wrote across the dark paper. Petitioner, Malin Voss. Sponsor, Elyra Wren. Received, Day 12. Sponsor window closes, Day 30. Hold order. Do not review before Day 31. Reason: sponsor credit recoverable after window failure. Elyra's fingers went numb around the edge of the cabinet. She had known. She had not known enough. Caedric read the line without moving. "Who wrote the hold order?" he asked. Vayla answered too smoothly. "Queue priority may be generated by classification language." "Who wrote it?" "The office." "Who?" Vayla's expression cooled. "My mark may appear, because my office administers the queue." The page turned slightly. A narrow column appeared on the right. Ordering hand. Vayla Rusk. The vault went very quiet. Vayla did not flinch. A scribe's mark confirms processing, not intent. Elyra lifted her eyes. You waited until mercy expired. No, Vayla said. I waited until unauthorized interference expired. Malin's hunger was not interference. Your attachment to her was... Caedric's voice came low. How many? Vayla did not answer. Elyra did. She looked at the hanging strips and spoke the next name. Sarah Vale. Another strip tore free. The ledger page turned. Essere vale. Sponsor, Elyra Wren. Hold until house door recognition lapses. Rights recoverable. Winter portion, debt shield. Ordering hand. Vayla Rusk. Elyra's throat tightened. Mira Holland. Another strip. Mira Holland. Sponsor, Elyra Wren. Hold until personal shelter term expires. Sale review. Permitted after sponsor failure. Ordering hand. Vayla Rusk. Caedric turned toward Vayla. You used time as a blade. Vayla's eyes sharpened. I used order as order. These households were unstable. Elyra Wren attached her name to too many desperate claims. Without delay review, the council could not tell mercy from manipulation. Elyra laughed once. It came out quiet. You did not need to tell the difference. You only needed the clock to kill it for you. The ledger brightened. A new phrase wrote itself beneath Mira's order. Delay converts mercy into failure. The boxes along the shelves began to tremble. Not opening. Remembering. Caedric looked at the phrase as if it had turned into a blade in his own hand. His voice changed when he spoke again, but still no apology came. Only command, controlled and cold. Name every petitioner delayed under Elyra Wren's sponsorship. Vayla stepped forward sharply. Majesty! That would create mass claim resurrection. Elyra looked at her. Resurrection is what frightened you. Chaos is what frightens me. No, Elyra said. Answer frightens you. The ledger page shook. Then, instead of writing names, it showed a seal. Caedric's policy seal. Beneath it, one clause appeared. Efficiency clause. Petitions marked emotional disturbance may be held without review until sponsor terms lapse. Caedric went still. There it was, not merely Vayla's hand. His policy, his clean doors, his hunger for order written into the mechanism that had starved pleas until they became property. He did not look at Elyra. Perhaps he did not dare. Vayla saw the opening and stepped into it. Majesty, she said softly, this is precisely why the clause existed. Without it, one petitioner could freeze council resources indefinitely. Elyra Wren made herself the center of 47 claims. No responsible throne permits one woman's heart to overrule distribution law. Elyra turned to Caedric then. Let him feel the choice. He met Hargaze. Something in him wanted to say her name. He did not. Good. Her name was not a bandage. He turned back to the ledger. Continue. The book did. A second hidden clause appeared. If he had looked wounded before, this one made him look older. Recommended escalation. If petitioner continues filing after returns, initiate sponsor disqualification. Target. Elyra Wren. Rights recovery value. 47 active claims. Transfer destination, Council Mercy Vault. Vayla's composure thinned. The vault shelves began to open, one narrow crack at a time. Inside every box, Elyra saw small objects answering the line. Keys, ration chips, debt shields, burial pins, protection credits, all waiting to be taken back if her name could be broken. Caedric's hand closed at his side. Active claims, he said. Vayla's voice sharpened. Potential claims. The ledger corrected her. Active. The word burned brighter. Elyra stepped closer to the book. They were still alive in law. No one answered. Not even Vayla. Then the final line of the page wrote itself slowly, as if dragged from the deepest part of the cabinet. Final delay order. Elyra Wren. Status. Door recognition to be suspended at midnight. Cause. Petitioner classified as emotional disturbance. Authorized under Alpha King policy seal. The Mercy Vault darkened. Far above them, somewhere in Thornemere, a bell began to toll midnight, and every door that had opened for Elyra started closing. The first closing door sounded like a judgment finding its hinge. Far above the Mercy Vault, black wood struck stone. Then another. Then another. The sound traveled downward through Thornemere in a tightening circle, door by door, floor by floor, as if the keep itself had begun erasing the path back to daylight. The pale glow inside the vault dimmed with each closing threshold. Petition boxes that had opened around Elyra shuddered and began to seal again. Malin's house key went cold in her hands. Vayla Rusk smiled then. Not broadly. She was too disciplined for that. Only enough for Elyra to see that the Midnight Order had always been the final page. Door recognition suspension is routine containment, Vayla said. When a petitioner becomes a procedural disturbance, the hall must prevent further spread. Caedric turned toward her. Further spread of what? Unverified claims. Elyra looked at the boxes closing one shelf at a time. Names. Vayla's eyes slid to her. A name without recognized door has no standing. The words struck the vault like iron. Elyra knew that law. Everyone in Thornemere knew it, even children. A wolf might sleep under trees, fight under moonlight, bleed on stone, but without door recognition, pack law treated them as passing breath. No door, no petition. No petition, no claim, no claim, no theft. Clean. Efficient. Caedric stepped to the vault entrance. Opened the doors. Nothing answered him. Only another door slammed above. His wolf shadow rose along the wall, teeth bared. Open, he commanded again. The Mercy Vault did not obey. Vayla folded her hands. The emergency sequence is operating under your policy seal, Majesty. It protects the hall from petitioner contamination until review is complete. Caedric's face hardened. Elyra did not look at him. She could not afford the shape of his realization, not while 47 lives were being folded shut with hers. The petitions on the floor began sliding backward toward their boxes. Elyra dropped to one knee and caught Malin's petition before it vanished into council custody again. The paper burned her palm with mercy silver. Not power, urgency. Caedric moved toward her. She said, "Do not help me hold it." He stopped. Vayla's mouth tightened. She understands at least one law. Petition pages cannot be upheld by royal pity. Elyra looked up at her. No. They need answer. The word traveled through the vault. One closing box paused. Just one. That was enough to prove the law had heard. Caedric's gaze sharpened. What answer? Elyra rose slowly, Malin's petition in one hand and the recovered house key in the other. A closed door means a plea is finished. An open door means the pack still owes answer. You cannot hold a door open with apology, command, or shame. Vayla said, nor with performance. Elyra turned toward the passage. Then let us stop performing in vaults. She walked. The vault tried to close behind her. Iron teeth scraped stone. Black shutters fell, one after another. But Malin's house key glowed in her fist, and the nearest door ahead opened before she reached it. Not all doors. One. Malin's. Elyra stepped through. Caedric followed at a distance, close enough to witness, not close enough to claim. Vayla followed too because power never trusted a room it did not control. They passed back through the hook chamber, where Elyra's transfer tag still lay split open on the black slate. The cords there were tightening, names fading along their fibers, as midnight worked its way through the policy clause. Elyra stopped at the center of the chamber. Vayla's voice cut behind her. If you delay, your recognition lapses. Elyra looked at the cords. That is what you counted on. She took Malin's house key and pressed it against the petition in her palm. The key did not fit anything. Not a lock, not a box, not a door. It fit the name. The petition flared. Malin Voss, widow of the North Mill, protection stolen before burial fire. Elyra lifted her voice. I answer Malin Voss. The chamber shook. Vayla's eyes narrowed. You cannot answer in the council's name. I do not. Then you answer with no authority. Elyra looked at Caedric then. His face was unreadable, but the wound in his eyes had deepened past pride. Good. Let it deepen. I answer with the right I spent before your policy stole it back, Elyra said. 1 protection credit, 1 winter ration, 1 burial fire, 1 house door recognition. Return them to Malin Voss. Malin's box burst open behind them in the vault. The silver light raced through the hook chamber, down the corridor, and upward through the keep. Somewhere above, 1 black door slammed open so hard the stone around it cracked. The petition in Elyra's hand turned warm. Not burned. Received. The first petition cord on the hook wall broke and fell to the floor. Vayla went pale. Caedric understood before she could cover it. 1 answered claim keeps your door recognized, he said. Elyra did not thank him for learning to count the cost. She reached for the next cord. Vayla stepped forward. There are 46 more. Midnight will finish before you answer them all. Elyra's hand stopped. There. The second blade inside the first. Even if she knew the law, even if the doors answered, time could still murder mercy in a respectable sequence. Caedric's voice came from behind her. Can witnesses answer? Vayla snapped. No. Too quickly. Elyra heard it. So did Caedric. The Alpha King turned toward the corridor beyond the chamber, where distant doors were still closing. Every steward, guard, widow, scout, servant, and council witness in Thornemere who heard a petition tonight come to the hall. Vayla's expression flashed with alarm. Majesty, witness answer requires recognized standing. Caedric looked at her. Then we will see which doors still recognize us. He walked past Elyra, not leading her claim, opening space for witnesses to reach it. For the first time that night, the king's authority moved in the right direction, and Elyra hated how much the hall seemed to breathe when he used it properly. They emerged back into Petition Hall as midnight tolled again. Half the doors were closed. Half remained trembling. People crowded the edges of the chamber. Guards, stewards, petition clerks, servants drawn by the opening doors, faces pale beneath the iron chandeliers. At their feet lay the 46 petitions Elyra had carried. Each glowed faintly, waiting for answer. Vayla lifted her voice. No one touches a returned petition. Any witness who interferes risks standing review. Fear moved through the hall. Then a thin voice spoke from near the side entrance. I know Malin Voss. An old mill worker stepped forward, trembling. Her husband died in the levee. She was owed burial fire. The door behind him opened. A second witness stepped out from the kitchen arch. Saravel slept in the ash room after her debt shield was taken. Another door opened. Elyra looked at the petitions on the floor. One by one, they turned toward the voices. Vayla moved toward the high desk, seal the hall. Caedric's wolf shadow struck the desk before her hand reached the emergency stamp. The stamp shattered, but the midnight bell rang again. The floor beneath Elyra's feet flashed white. A black line wrote itself around her boots. Door recognition suspension beginning. Every petition in the hall lifted into the air. Not toward the witnesses, toward Elyra. Across all 46 glowing pages, the same line appeared. Answer required before final toll, or sponsor rights transferred to Council Mercy Vault. The final toll did not ring at once. It gathered. Somewhere high above Thornemere, the midnight bell drew breath inside the tower, and every petition floating around Elyra Wren trembled as if it could feel the sound before it became metal. 46 glowing pages circled her in pale mercy silver, each one carrying a name the council had tried to return to silence. Answer required before final toll or sponsor rights transfer to Council Mercy Vault. The black line around Elyra's boots tightened. Not enough to bind her. Enough to remind the hall what waited. Vayla Rusk stood near the shattered emergency stamp, her face calm again now that time had become her ally. No witness can answer 46 claims before the final toll, she said. This is why procedure exists. Feeling cannot outrun law. Elyra looked at the petitions. Women, widows, exiles, hungry boys, unhoused minors. Names she had carried until the hall called the carrying dramatic. No, she said. Feeling cannot. Witness can. The first petition spun toward her hand. Aceravale. Elyra caught it before it flew into the black line at her feet. The page burned her palm, but she did not let go. She lifted her voice. Sarah Vale. Debt shield removed after exile status. House door recognition suspended. Protection sponsor. Elyra Wren. A woman near the kitchen arch stepped forward, both hands shaking. I witnessed Sarah Vale sleep in the ashroom after the council took her shield. The door behind her opened. The petition brightened. Elyra turned to the next. Mira Holland, exile widow. Sale review, entered after sponsor term was delayed. A stable hand came forward. I saw Mira at the south gate the morning they took her. She said she had a petition pending. Another door opened. The black line around Elyra's boots loosened by a finger's width. Vayla saw it. Her eyes sharpened. Witnesses who repeat unverified claims may be marked for standing review. Fear moved through the hall faster than wind. Several witnesses lowered their eyes. Caedric Thorne stepped forward. Not to Elyra. To the witnesses. No one loses standing for answering a petition tonight. Vayla's mouth tightened. Majesty, your authority cannot override the efficiency clause while suspension is active. My authority wrote the wound, he said. It can stand where the bleeding is. Elyra did not look at him, though the words struck the hall hard. Good words were not repair. Not yet. She caught another petition. Ansel Reed. Living exile. Destination entered before review completion. A door guard swallowed. I carried the transfer notice. It was sealed before the petition was opened. The petition flared. Another door opened. Then another name. Then another. The hall changed. Not into chaos. Into answer. Servants spoke from thresholds. Stewards named ration boxes they had delivered to council custody. A widow's sister identified a burial pin that never reached the pyre. A young clerk admitted she had copied the phrase abandoned by silence onto 12 slips without knowing it would turn hunger into property. Every time a witness spoke from a recognized door, a petition brightened, then descended gently to the floor. Not returned. Received. The black circle around Elyra's boots weakened. Vayla moved. She did not shout. She did not plead. She walked to the fallen emergency stamp, knelt, and drew from beneath the broken wood a second seal no one had seen before. Small, black, marked with a closed mouth beneath a wolf claw. Elyra saw it and went cold. "Caedric," she said. He turned at the sound of his name from her mouth. Vayla pressed the black seal against the floor. "Contagion review," she said. The seal answered. Black lines shot across the hall, not toward the petitions, but toward the witnesses. They wrapped around door thresholds, climbed over boots, curled around wrists. One by one, the people who had spoken began to choke on their next words. The petition pages flickered. Vayla rose. "Untrained witnesses are vulnerable to emotional contamination. Until council review, their answers are suspended." A young clerk clawed at her throat. The old mill worker tried to say Malin's name again and made no sound. Caedric's wolf shadow surged across the floor. Vayla did not flinch. "Strike the seal, Majesty, and you strike your own policy apparatus." Every answered petition becomes contestable. Elyra stepped toward the old mill worker. The black line around her boots followed, tightening with each step. Caedric moved as if to stop her. She looked at him once. He stopped. Elyra placed Malin's petition against the mill worker's door, not in his hand. On the threshold, "A door can answer when the mouth is bound," she said. Vayla's composure cracked. "That is not recognized practice." It was before scribes learned to own hunger. The door shuddered. The old mill worker pressed his palm to the wood from the other side of the black line. The petition brightened. His voice did not return, but the door spoke. "Witnessed." The hall went silent. Then the kitchen door answered. "Witnessed." Then the steward's arch. "Witnessed." Then chamber doors, side doors, servant doors, storage doors, widow doors, scout doors, every threshold that had heard a name and owed answer began to speak in pale mercy silver across its own wood. Vayla staggered back. The black contagion lines snapped one by one. The witnesses breathed again. Elyra caught the next petition with both hands. Her arms ached. Her throat burned from reading names. But she read. She read until her voice went rough. She read until every person who had been called excessive took form in the hall as ration, key, debt shield, burial pin, winter portion, house door claim. Caedric stood near the high desk and broke every new seal Vayla reached for before it touched the floor. He did not apologize. He did not beg Elyra to look at him. He guarded the answering long enough for it to matter. One by one, the petitions fell received. Forte, 43, 45, then 46. The final page remained in the air, but it was not one Elyra recognized. It hung above the center of the petition hall, larger than the others, its cord black instead of gray, its seal marked not with a petitioner's claw, but with the Alpha King's policy mark. Vayla's face went white. Caedric looked at the page. "What is that?" The page opened by itself. No name appeared at first. Only a classification. Sponsored disqualification petition. Target. Elyra Wren. Request. Remove door recognition. Recover 47 active claims. Transfer all mercy rights to Council Vault. Caedric's jaw tightened. Who filed it? The answer burned across the bottom in silver-black fire. Filed under Alpha King Policy Authority. Requesting hand. Vayla Rusk. Final answer owed by Caedric Thorne. The midnight bell gave its last breath, and every door in Thornemere waited for the Alpha King to answer. The midnight bell did not strike. It held. That was worse. The sound waited in the tower above Thornemere, trapped between breath and iron, while every door in the keep listened for Alpha King Caedric Thorne's answer. The petition hall stood beneath pale, mercy silver light, crowded with guards, stewards, servants, widows, clerks, and council witnesses who had spoken names until fear lost its first grip on them. At the center of it all, Elyra Wren stood inside the weakening black circle of her own suspension. Above her floated the final petition. Sponsor disqualification petition. Target. Elyra Wren. Request. Remove door recognition. Recover 47 active claims. Transfer all mercy rights to Council Vault. Filed under Alpha King Policy Authority. Requesting hand. Vayla Rusk. Final answer owed by Caedric Thorne. Vayla Rusk stood very still, not defeated, waiting. That was what made her dangerous. She had built the policy like a locked hallway, and now she believed even the Alpha King had to walk through one of the doors she had prepared. If you reject it without review, she said softly, you violate your own efficiency clause. Every council ruling under that policy becomes vulnerable. Caedric did not look away from the petition. Vayla continued, voice gaining strength. If you approve it, Elyra Wren loses standing and the claims return to custody. If you delay, midnight complete suspension. If you rewrite the answer, you admit the policy was unlawful under your own seal. The Hall understood then. This had never been only about Elyra. She was the example, the warning, the woman whose mercy would be used to teach every future petitioner that the council could turn compassion into instability and instability into confiscation. Caedric's wolf shadow stood behind him, huge and dark against the high wall. It did not growl, it did not threaten. It watched the doors the way a wolf watched a trap already closed around its own paw. Caedric took one step toward the final petition. Elyra's voice stopped him. No. Every eye turned to her. The black line around her boots tightened, but she did not move back. Caedric looked at her. The answer is owed by me. Yes, Elyra said. So do not answer as if I am the wound. The words struck the hall harder than any accusation. Caedric's face changed. Only slightly. Enough. Elyra lifted her chin toward the floating petition. Read what it asks. It does not ask whether the 47 claims are false. It asks whether I should be removed so the council can recover them. Vayla's eyes narrowed. Because her standing is the procedural defect. No, Elyra said. My standing is what kept them alive in law. The final petition trembled. The black circle around her feet flickered. Elyra looked at Caedric, and this time she let him feel all of it. The returned pages, the blank words, the widow portions, the sale sheets, the recovered credits, the doors closing because a king had liked efficiency more than answers. Do not pardon me, she said. Do not choose me. Do not protect me with another closed door. Answer the policy. Caedric did not speak at once. Good. A quick answer would have been pride pretending to repair. He turned slowly toward the throne shadow at the end of the hall, where the carved wolf arch stood above the sealed royal door. It was the only door in Petition Hall that had not opened all night. The king's door. The door through which policies entered law. Caedric walked to it. Vayla's composure cracked. Majesty. He placed his burned hand against the royal seal carved into the black wood. The door did not open. The hall went silent. Vayla breathed out, almost smiling. Caedric closed his eyes. Then, before every witness, he lowered himself to one knee before his own sealed door. Not before Elyra. Not before the council. Before the law he had allowed to stand between him and the people outside it. I answer as the hand that signed, he said. The royal door shuddered. I signed the efficiency policy without reading the doors it would close. I allowed unread petitions to be treated as silence. I allowed silence to become abandonment. I allowed abandonment to become property. The midnight bell trembled above them. Vayla stepped forward. Majesty, Self-indictment does not answer the petition. Caedric's eyes opened. No, he said, it opens the door. The royal seal split. Black wood swung inward. Beyond it was not a chamber. It was the outer petition steps of Thornemere, visible through impossible distance. The cold stone where widows had waited, where exiles had slept, where children had held folded pleas in both hands until guards told them the hall was closed. The hall saw them, not ghosts, not visions, records. Every person whose petition had touched that door and been turned away. Caedric rose. His voice carried into the open threshold. The sponsored disqualification petition against Elyra Wren is refused as false in cause, corrupt in purpose, and filed to conceal theft. The black circle around Elyra's boots broke. Vayla's face went white. The final petition did not fall. It turned toward her. Caedric continued. The 47 active claims remain active. Their rights return to the named holders. Their doors remain recognized. Their witness answers stand. The petitions on the floor flared one by one. Malin's house key, Sarah's debt shield, Mira's shelter mark, Ansel's living exile claim, all brightened with pale mercy silver. Vayla reached for the black seal hidden inside her sleeve. Elyra moved first. Not Caedric. Elyra. She caught Vayla's wrist before the seal touched air. The hall froze. Vayla stared at her hand as if a petitioner had no right to stop the machinery that had nearly consumed her. Elyra's fingers tightened. This hand filed the petition, she said. The final page dropped between them, hovering over Vayla's wrist. Then let it answer what it requested. The page wrapped around Vayla's forearm. She gasped. Pale mercy silver burned through the scribe's sleeve, not into flesh, but into record. Lines appeared one after another. Requesting hand, Vayla Rusk. Intended recovery, 47 active claims. Intended transfer, Council Mercy Vault. Secondary value, exile sale review, ration custody, widow portion holding. The hall went cold. Caedric's voice turned dangerous. Secondary value, Vayla spoke through clenched teeth. Redistribution. Elyra looked at the page. Read it properly. The doors answered. Not one. All. Sale. The word appeared across every open threshold in Thornemere. Vayla's arm shook as the record continued. Illegal exile sales enabled by sponsored disqualification. Protection theft enabled by unread classification. Delay orders used to expire mercy windows. The final petition released Vayla and rose high above the hall. Then it split into 47 silver sparks. Each spark flew to a petition on the floor. The pages did not scream. They did not punish. They delivered. One by one, the rights stolen into the mercy vault returned through the open doors. Winter ration chips skittered across stone to the households that owned them. Burial fire pins flew into the hands of widows. Debt shields landed before exiles. House keys rang against thresholds that had been marked closed. People began to weep, not softly, not prettily. With the exhaustion of those who'd been told their hunger was too emotional and now held proof that the law had owed them bread, Vayla stepped back. Caedric's wolf shadow blocked her path. She looked at him then with anger stripped bare. You will drown in petitions. Caedric's expression did not soften. Then Thornemere will learn to breathe underwater before it calls mercy a flood. Elyra looked at him despite herself. The line was strong. That did not make it enough. Caedric turned to the council witnesses. Council Scribe Vayla Rusk is stripped of custody authority. Her ledgers, vaults, delay orders, sale reviews, and classification seals open under witness law. Every petitioner named under emotional disturbance will receive public answer. Vayla laughed once, harsh and small. Public answer. You think people want truth? They want doors that keep other people's grief outside. Elyra stepped to the high petition desk. The red stamp still lay there. Emotional nonsense. She picked it up. For a moment, the whole hall watched her hand. Then she pressed the stamp against the black oak desk. It shattered, not by force, by refusal. Pale mercy silver ran through the cracks, spreading from the desk to the floor, from the floor to the walls, from the walls to every door still trembling in the keep. Words wrote themselves above the petition arch. Unread is not abandoned. The hall answered in silver. A mercy petition must be opened before it can be judged. Then, beneath that, another line formed more slowly. No council may take what a plea still names. Caedric looked at Elyra, not as if he had saved her, as if he finally understood that she had been holding the shape of a kingdom he had almost let starve. He crossed the hall and stopped several paces away. The distance mattered. Elyra Wren, he said. She did not turn fully. I will not ask forgiveness tonight. Good, she said. A breath moved through the hall. His mouth tightened, but he nodded once. I will ask what the hall owes first. Elyra looked at the open doors, the returned rights, the people standing in thresholds with tears and keys and ration chips in their hands. The hall owes answers, she said. Caedric looked toward the petition desk. Then the hall is yours to reopen under witness law. Vayla, held by guards now, went rigid. A petitioner cannot hold petition authority. Elyra turned to her. No, she said. A petitioner cannot be the only one. She faced the hall. The petition hall belongs to every door that owes answer. Widows, exiles, debt-bound, servants, scouts, mothers, sons, anyone whose plea has a name. Caedric's gaze stayed on her, and something in it lowered itself without kneeling. Then witness it, he said. One by one, the doors answered. Witnessed. The word traveled through Thornemere until it reached the outer steps and the night beyond. The midnight bell finally rang, but it no longer closed anything. It marked the first hour of open petition. By dawn, the Thornemere petition hall had changed. The High Council desk was removed from its platform and set at floor level. The Mercy Vault was emptied under named witness. The unread Mercy Ledger was chained open, not to shame those who had pleaded, but to keep law from pretending it had never heard them. Vayla Rusk was made to sit before every recovered petition and hear each name read aloud before tribunal. Caedric stood through all of it. He did not ask Elyra to stand beside him. He stood where she told him to stand, at the door, opening it, again, again, again. When the last of the 47 claims had been restored, Elyra stepped outside onto the petition stairs. Morning had turned the black doors silver at their edges. People waited below with folded pages held carefully in both hands. Caedric followed no closer than the third step behind her. Will you leave Thornemere? He asked. Elyra looked out at the people waiting. No, she said. His breath changed. She heard it. She did not reward it. I am not staying for you. I know. She looked back then. His amber eyes held exhaustion, guilt, and something restrained enough not to insult her with hunger. I will earn the right to be read, he said. Elyra studied him for a long moment. Then she turned toward the first petitioner waiting at the foot of the stairs. Open the door, she said. Caedric opened it. The first petition of the new morning crossed the threshold in silence. Not silence dressed as dismissal, silence made careful by reverence. And above the doors of Thornemere, where the red stamp had once ended lives without reading them, pale mercy silver held the new law for every pack to see. Mercy unread becomes witness. Beneath it, written by 47 restored claims and one woman who had refused to let grief be filed as nonsense, stood the name the council had tried to disqualify. Elyra Wren, First witness of the open door,